Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. This video is to recap my focus month on 60s, 70s, 80s ambient, new age, experimental, space rock albums from those years. Um, when I originally started, or when I really originally thought of the idea of doing these albums, I just randomly chose 30 albums from my collection. That have it's really just randomly, and I there was a couple there that I made sure there's a few artists that I made sure I at least grabbed one of, but after sort of going through this, I kind of felt like I should have been a little bit more maybe exact or critical and picked some really key artists that helped inspire me and sort of collect like 30 that were real, one album from at least one artist of picking 30 of my most inspirational artists from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like I didn't even choose a Brian Eno one. I thought that would have been kind of obvious, and I've already reviewed a Brian Eno album or two, anyways, or related Brian Eno album. But I really felt like this is a really good snapshot. These 30 albums of really my love for 60s, 70s, and 80s experimental electronic music. This kind of has a good snapshot of all the different genres, and I really enjoyed this month, like going through them again. And some of these I haven't heard for 20, 30 years. Some of them I got recently, like in the last 5 years. But for the most part, I got these albums 20, 25 years ago, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was getting more into new age music and the history of electronic music and really learning about them. And so, just want to recap them real quick, and also, since they are in the same, mostly in the same genre, I did rate them and rank them, and so I put them in the top 30. So all 30 are in order of how they finished and how I rated them. So just bear with me while I pull up my list, and I'll briefly go over them. Um, I think the other thing I wanted to say about going over these albums and sort of rejuvenated my love for a lot of new age albums, and strangely enough, it's led to that I'm going to reissue two of these artists' original albums on vinyl. One for one from Wavestar from 1984, their album Mind Journey, which has never been. I, I don't think it's never been on. Actually, it's never been on vinyl. It was originally a cassette only compilation, and a cassette only release, and then a few times it got put on CD in like 1990 and I think like 2009, but it's never been put on vinyl. So I'm happy to be putting that on my label, and then also Emerald Webb's fourth album called Aqua Regis. I'll be reissuing that one as well, and that one's I think that was a cassette only compilation, an album as well. So I'm really excited that this doing this focus month has kind of led to some establishing a few relationships with actual artists in this list, and actually going to be releasing their music, which is a complete honor. And I'll be really excited to share that with the people who buy my label. And yeah, the we're actually working on getting Robert Rich to remaster, or master for vinyl, the Emerald Webb album. So that's really exciting to have him as a part of my as a part of my label as well. So that's really exciting. But yeah, let's get into reviewing these rankings. And this is going from 30th place to first place. If you want to watch any of the reviews on these, just look at my playlists for new age electronic music and experimental music in that playlist below. You'll see all of the full reviews for these. So I just want to briefly go over these and just put them in order just for fun. And then, but if you want to see the full video, go into the playlist. All right, so 30th place, Patrick Bernard's Atlantis Angelus album. It was actually the only album that I rated okay. It was a 54 out of 100. Everything else was above good, which I'm happy to say. In 29th place, wasn't this particular album because I don't own it, but a couple of the tracks from it are on this track, but it's by Synergy, the album called Chords, I think from 1977. There's a couple tracks on here that was on here, but just wanted to place this one here. Synergy, number 29. Number 28, or sorry, tied for 27 was two albums. One of them that I didn't, actually two albums were tied at 27. One was Keith Jarrett's Arbor Xena from 1978 on ECM Records. I didn't review this because I wanted to throw in one strictly jazz record into these 30, and I feel like I'm okay on reviewing jazz fusion, but maybe not the most educated when it comes to reviewing jazz or classical. And like with pop music, maybe heavy metal or punk, I probably wouldn't be comfortable in reviewing those as well. So I didn't actually do a video on this because I don't really have a lot to say for it, but I do think it's a good album. I gave it a 66 out of 100. And I just didn't find I had enough really to say to make a whole video about it. I just don't feel comfortable in reviewing jazz music, so probably won't be doing any jazz music. But I wanted to give it a shot as this channel grows, and me doing different videos is kind of be about me sort of finding the edges in what I review, and of course this channel being electronic related, jazz is on the cusp of that, but depending on what they use in the album. But I may review maybe a couple other Keith Jarrett albums. I know like Spheres and his and the Spheres and the Spheres album that he has. I can't Spheres and something else from '76, and then also the Cone album. I may review those because those are a little bit more chamber music and sort of maybe more experimental side, but they're still sort of like organ music and maybe more jazz related, and him playing piano and stuff like that. I may review those, but not so much like jazz records per se. And that one's a little bit more on jazz side. But I do think it's a good album. 66. Also tied at 66 was Inyoma Land's album from 1983. I gave it also a 66. You have to forgive me, I'm not pronouncing it. It's called Danzidan Poginon. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Probably not. But also gave that a 66 out of 100. There were three albums that I rated 67 out of 100. They were William Penn's Crystal Rainbows. Also Jean-Louis Bucci's 1978 album called Sunflower. And then also I gave a 67 to Interior's 1982 album, self-titled album called Interior, from the synth pop Japanese group called Interior. And a 68 was the oldest. 68 out of 100 was two albums that were tied at 22nd place. One of them, Andrew Rudin's album called Tragedia from 1968. This is actually the oldest album that I had on the list. Probably the most experimental too. 1968. Also tied at 68 with the 68 was Roger Eno's album called Voices from 1984, I think it was. In 20th place, tied for 20th at a 70 out of 100. So 21 albums in total were rated, out of the 30 were rated very good or better. So a lot of strong albums, so I was happy to review a lot of would-be close to classic albums for sure. With a 70 out of 100 is Carl Wynne-Gardner's and Walter Whitney's Dreaming in Colors. And then also Patrick Hearn's 1986 album called Ancient Dreams. So those got a 70 out of 100. With a score of 71 out of 100, Penguin Cafe's. Oh, sorry. Actually, it's Michael Stern's Encounter from 1982, I believe. 82 or 83? 83. Encounter by Michael Stearns. In 17th place with a 72 out of 100, Penguin Cafe Orchestra's Music from the Penguin Cafe Orchestra from 1976. Also tied with the 72 was Wendy and Carl's Antarctica album from 1997. It was actually the newest album on all these in this top 30. In my focus month, in 15th place, tied with a 73 out of 100, David Borden from Mother's Mallard, Music for the Amplified Keyboard Instruments. And also Mark Isham's Vapor Drawing on Windham Hill Records, 1984. In 13th place, had a tie with these two albums. John Hassel's Dream Theory, 74 out of 100 from 1981. And then also Harold Budd's 1985 album called Lovely Thunder. 1986, Lovely Thunder. And then tied in for 11th place with a 75 out of 100, Arthur Russell's World of Echo, and from 1986, and Tomita's The Bermuda Triangle. So those got a 75 out of 100. So now we're really getting into the top 10. Some of the all these albums are on the high side of very good and higher. So in 9th place, tied for 9th place, Garry Hughes' Ancient Evenings from 1984. A really fantastic tribal mixed with ambient, organic, all those things tied into a really strong new age album. Garry Hughes, Ancient Evenings, 76 out of 100. Also tied with that was Wavestar's 1987 album called Moonstar. This is a really strong balance of Berlin School ambient and a little bit of space rock. There's a couple of really fantastic tracks on here. A couple of ones that are more on the space rock, but still, kind of in that maybe Pink Floyd kind of range or whatnot. But there's some really good long drawn out sort of Tangerine Dream like tracks on here as well. And then tied for 7th place, or I'm sorry, in 8th place, Emerald Webb's album Valley of the Birds with a 77 out of 100. In 6th place, Tangerine Dreams 1974 album Phaedra with an 81 out of 100 as basically a 70s classic. This goes into my 80s score, so this is a classic of electronic music for the 70s. Definitely a Berlin School classic right here. Also, they got two albums tied for 5th. Tontos Head Expanding Project from 1971, originally called 001. If you're into the history of electronic music, into the history of keyboards and modular synthesizers and audio synthesis, hard to not get a chance to play this album and get inspired by this. This is in many ways a groundbreaking album. It includes a lot of funk, includes soundtrack music, all different kinds of music tied into doing one instrument and showcasing the ability of this amazing man-made, almost like a collaboration of a lot of different equipments at the time and making it into one really versatile workspace station inside the Tonto keyboard. So yeah, just obviously a groundbreaking album for the time. I gave it an 82 out of 100. Also tied with for fifth place with the 82 out of 100 was Iosis. I, I, Isos. I always forget how to pronounce his name. I've never heard it pronounced. I need to learn how to pronounce it so I know. His second album called Angelic Music. Many, I think this came out in '76 or '77. Many people think he's one of the pioneers of New Age music. There's a lot of healing music in here. There's two tracks on here. Both are 30 minutes. Both are long, evolving, euphoric, uh, kind of healing music. Very spiritual and, but at the same time, very minimal and very soothing and very inspirational. All the same, almost classic of New Age music. And then in fourth place, with an 83 out of 100, Gong's 1971 album called You. A classic of krautrock, classic of progressive rock, right? Probably more on the. Sometimes it's always almost I always forget to display it like this. It's more like this upside down. Um, I always think it's like Gong on the other way, but that's obviously not you, so it's Gong. Sometimes I put it upside down. This is a classic of krautrock in many ways. Such an interesting blend. And there's a little bit of psychedelic on here as well. A little bit of um, early ambient here. A lot of interesting ambient, but a little bit of more minimalism than a lot of krautrock, and not just maybe a little bit more direction than a lot of krautrock at the time or experimental music. This really balances so many styles, but really I think it's the psychedelic edge to this and really the unique kind of sound on here that really kind of catapults this into a classic of 1970s krautrock. In third place, Conrad Schnitzler's Con album from 1978. This is a classic of experimentalism and electronic music. Four tracks on here. Excuse me, five tracks on here. Um, just in so many ways, a great example of what experimental and electronic music can do without words, without really, just with a lot of creativity and a lot of music processing, a lot of ingenuity, just a lot of creativity to make this album. And the sounds here for 1978 probably can't be beat. Just one of the all-time greats in experimental music for the 1970s. I gave it an 83 out of 100. It was tied with third with Gong. And then second place with the 84, Manuel Göttsching's E2 E4. Classic minimalistic album. Groundbreaking for the history of ambient music. Groundbreaking for what's going to come after it. Heavily inspired. Inspirational piece. Inspired house music and techno music going forward into the 80s and beyond. Just I think probably in some ways probably like the one example of closing out the 70s and starting the 80s and the future of electronic music in one album. This hones on it. 59-minute track that just continually evolves, highlighting minimalism, highlighting what you can do with evolving repetitive music to where it becomes interesting. In many respects, not only just that, but the instruments used and then what it inspired. Just um, impossible not to rate this really a classic. And I gave it an 84 out of 100. And then the highest score with a 92 out of 100 was Steve Roach's Structures from Silence from 1984 or 1983, I believe. This is the reissue, but probably probably one of the pinnacle albums of the 80s, especially early 80s, and the balance of ambient music, electronic music, and organic music, combining field recordings, um, you know, minimalistic. Really, every direction of electronic music that came before it. This one really honed in on it and really took it to a new level for the 80s. There's experimentalism in here, there's minimalism in here, there's analog equipment in here, digital equipment, organic field recording, spacey music. It really and really it not only just kind of showed what it could do in some ways, like the sounds and the instruments, but this really kind of took it to the level where it influences your mood and your outlook and makes you think and makes you dream. It makes you stargaze. It's comforting. It's relaxing. It'll take you to another world. It's just everything when it comes to what ambient music represents to me and new age music. It encapsulates all that for me. And it's a at a 92 out of 100, it's an all-time classic. It's an album that you would give to really anybody. Somebody who doesn't know electronic music, somebody who's into rock music and has no idea about ambient music, somebody who knows a lot about techno but doesn't know a lot about ambient music. Even if they've never heard it, they're into classical music and they've never heard an electronic album, I would give them this. If they've never heard even classical music or electronic music and they were into heavy metal, I would give them this album and have them listen to it and be inspired by what it represents. Just a great album, and Steve Roach is just an all time legend, of course. But yeah, that's my that wraps up my 30 days of focused on 60s, 70s, 80s new age electronic, ambient, and space rock music. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed some of those video reviews, and I'm curious to do maybe another. Maybe in a couple months, maybe I'll do another focus month. I've already done one shoegaze focused week, and then I decided to do this focus month. So maybe in the future I'll do another focus month on a certain genre or a certain period of time, because I really enjoyed doing that. But coming up, I'm going to be focused on some other things, and also starting up some reviews coming up, and also starting to review some music that I'm listening to now, in 2025, and new music that's coming out by up and coming producers. And hopefully, if you guys want me to review anything, you guys will send me an email, which is in the link there, and I'll be happy to talk to you about reviewing something of your request. All right, thanks so much for listening and watching.